Greetings, traveler. I'm glad to see you in my tavern. Here you may rest after a hard road, drink a mug of good ale, and listen to an old, honest witcher's tale, one that smells of smoke, winding roads, and silver coins. The wind off the Yaruga howled like a wounded beast that night. Snow swept across the road in thick, twisting veils, erasing the world beyond a few paces ahead. Geralt of Rivia rode slow and steady through the storm, his cloak crusted with frost, Roach's mane white with it. The sky had turned the color of hammered steel, and the air stung with the kind of cold that bit through armor and skin alike. It was nearly dusk when the Witcher spotted light through the storm, a cluster of torches glimmering along a low rise. The faint outline of palisades took shape as he drew nearer, a roadside inn, half fortress, half tavern, its walls huddled against the wind. Above the gate swung a weathered sign, the Frozen Mare. Geralt dismounted, led Roach through the gate, and shook the snow from his shoulders. Inside, warmth and noise rolled over him. Laughter, crackle and fire, the smell of ale and roast meat. He felt eyes turn toward him as they always did, the white hair, the two swords, the cat's eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The innkeeper, a red-faced man polishing tankards, froze mid-wipe. "Witcher," he said warily. "Not many of your kind pass through Voivode this time of year." "I don't come for the ale," Geralt said, his voice low but not unkind. "Room for the night, and hay for my horse." The innkeeper nodded quickly. "You'll have it. No trouble here, mind you. We've enough of that without adding monsters' layers to the mix." "Trouble?" Geralt asked, unbuckling his cloak. "The war again?" The man shook his head. "Worse than war, some say. The White Night." Geralt looked up. The room had gone quieter, as if the wind itself were listening. A woman by the hearth crossed herself. A man spat into the fire. "What's that supposed to mean?" Geralt asked. The innkeeper leaned closer. "Folk vanish, Witcher. Always on the full moon, when the snow shines white as milk. They go out to fetch water to check the stables, and they never come back. Come morning, we find their clothes in the snow. Just clothes. No bodies. Not a drop of blood. Only a circle of melted ice where they stood." Geralt frowned. "How many?" "7 this winter. First a shepherd, then a tanner's boy, then a whole patrol from the keep. Lady Elena herself lost her husband 2 nights past. They say the curse came for him, same as the others." The Witcher rubbed his chin, eyes narrowing. "Curse, then, not beast. How far is Voivode keep?" "Half a day north, if the road's not buried. But I wouldn't ride that way, Witcher. The snow glows strange there, bright as moonlight even when the sky's black." Geralt's expression didn't change, though the man's words stirred something in him. Curiosity, the kind that paid in coin. He took his drink, sat near the fire, and listened. As the night deepened, the talk grew grim. Farmers spoke of ghostly shapes drifting through the trees, of whispers in the snow, of footsteps that left no prints. One man swore he'd seen a pale figure standing on the frozen river, a woman in white weeping soundlessly as frost bloomed around her. "Some say she's the spirit of the war," a drunken soldier muttered, "from when Nilfgaard burned these lands. A ghost who can't rest because the ground's still soaked in blood." Geralt said nothing. He'd heard 100 such tales before, and sometimes one of them turned out true. When the fire burned low, he took his gear upstairs. The room was small and cold, but he'd slept in worse. He set his swords beside the bed, placed a sign of Ard on the door for warning, and lay down. He dreamed of snow, endless, blinding snow under a white moon. He heard a voice calling his name, soft, sorrowful, distant, and when he turned toward it, he saw a figure standing barefoot in the snow, her hair black as raven's wings, her skin white as death. "Geralt," she whispered, "free me." The Witcher woke before dawn, the fire dead, his breath misting in the air. Outside, the storm had stilled. The world was silent, blanketed in a cruel, perfect white. He dressed quickly, strapped on his swords, and went down. The innkeeper was already awake, watching him from behind the counter. "You're leaving?" the man asked. Geralt nodded. "To the keep. Someone's got to deal with your white knight." The innkeeper crossed himself. "You'll find no joy in that road, Witcher." "Never do," Geralt said. He mounted Roach and rode north, hooves crunching in the snow. The dawn light bled weakly through the clouds, turning the world silver. Ahead, beyond the frozen woods, the black shape of Voivode Keep rose against the white horizon. Cold, proud, and silent, Geralt lowered his hood, eyes narrowing against the glare. Something in the air felt wrong. Too still, too clean, as though the land itself held its breath. The Witcher spurred his horse onward toward the keep and the curse that waited there. Somewhere in the distance, faint and fleeting, he thought he heard the echo of a woman's cry, soft as falling snow. The ride to Voivode Keep was long and bitter. The road wound through frost-bound forests, where branches sagged under the weight of snow, their shapes warped into eerie silhouettes by the pale morning light. Every sound carried far, the crunch of hooves, the whisper of wind through pine needles, the distant creak of ice shifting beneath frozen streams. Geralt kept his eyes scanning the edges of the path. The silence of the woods was wrong. There should have been crows, foxes, perhaps the fleeting shadow of a hare. Instead, there was nothing. No life stirred beneath the white drifts. No tracks crossed his way. The forest felt deserted, dead yet watchful. He felt the tension hum in the air like a drawn bowstring. His Witcher medallion trembled faintly against his chest, not enough to warn of a monster's presence, but enough to tell him that something magical clung to this place, something ancient and cold. By noon, he saw the first sign of the keep, a black spire rising above the tree line, its banners limp against the wind. As he drew closer, the walls of Voivode loomed from the mist, massive, gray, and rimed with frost. The gate was half buried in snow, the portcullis raised but unmanned. Only the sigil carved above the arch remained untouched, a white falcon on a field of blue, wings spread in flight. Geralt dismounted and led Roach forward. Inside the courtyard, a few guards huddled by a fire, their armor dull with frost. They straightened quickly when they saw him, hands drifting toward their weapons. "Witcher," one called, his voice rough with suspicion. "What business brings you to Voivode?" "Your mistress sent for help," Geralt said. "Or so the rumors claim. I've come to deal with your curse." The guards exchanged uneasy glances. After a moment, one nodded and gestured toward the inner hall. "Speak with Lady Elena. She'll tell you what she dares." Geralt followed, boots crunching on the icy stones. Inside, the hall was dim and cold. Tapestries hung stiff with frost, and the great hearth at the far end burned low, as though the fire itself feared to blaze. Lady Elena sat in a high-backed chair, wrapped in furs. Her hair was dark and braided with silver cords, her face pale and drawn. At her side stood a steward, tall and spare, his hands clasped like claws. "Witcher," she greeted, voice low but steady. "You've come about the White Knight." Geralt inclined his head. "I've heard enough to know it's no ordinary haunting. Tell me everything you can." The lady's gaze flicked toward the window, where snow pressed against the glass like a white curtain. It began 3 months past, when the first full moon rose over the snows. My patrol vanished that night, 5 men gone without trace. Then the villagers, then my husband, Sir Halvard. He went out to search for the missing and never returned. Her fingers tightened on the armrest. Each time we find only their clothes and a ring of melted snow. I sent for priests, mages, even a druid from the Yaruga marshes. None could lift it. Some refused to stay after sundown. Geralt studied her. "You said your husband went searching?" "Where?" "The old battlefield," she replied quietly. "A mile north of here. It was there the curse began, I think. The war ended, but the land remembers. Some nights, you can still hear the cries." "The Nilfgaardian War," Geralt murmured. "You fought in it?" She looked away. "We defended our borders. Many died. That's all I care to recall." The Witcher nodded, though her evasion did not escape him. "I'll need to see the battlefield. At dusk." Her steward hissed softly. "At dusk? That's madness, Witcher. The White Knight walks then." Geralt's eyes were cold and calm. "That's precisely when I should be there." Lady Elena inclined her head. "As you will. But take this." She gestured to a guard, who handed Geralt a small iron talisman shaped like a falcon. "It's blessed, they say. My husband wore it the night he vanished. If there's any virtue left in it, may it protect you." He accepted it silently and turned to leave, but as he reached the door, the lady's voice halted him. "Witcher," she said softly, "if you find anything of Sir Halvard, his sword, his signet, bring it back to me. I must know." Geralt met her gaze for a moment, then nodded. "I'll see what the night reveals." Outside, the sky had begun to pale with the wan light of afternoon. He took Roach and rode north toward the battlefield. The wind carried a strange scent, something faintly sweet, like decaying flowers, beneath the snow. When he reached the site, he found it as silent as the woods before it. The ground stretched wide and flat, marked by old scars, broken spears, half-buried helms, a rusted sword jutting from the ice. The snow here glowed faintly, unnaturally bright, as though the moon had already risen. Geralt dismounted and crouched, brushing aside the snow. Beneath it, the soil was black and brittle, mixed with ash. His medallion quivered against his chest. Strong magic lingered here, wild, restless, bound to pain and memory. He murmured a spell and drew a circle in the snow with his silver blade, sprinkling salt from his pouch. The air inside the circle shimmered faintly. He waited. The first whisper came at sunset. A sound like weeping drifted across the frozen plain, thin and sorrowful. Then another, laughter high and broken. The snow began to swirl, though no wind stirred it. Geralt rose, sword in hand. "Show yourself," he said quietly. The snow parted, and a shape emerged. A woman pale as moonlight, her hair black and streaming like ink in water. Her feet touched the ground without sinking. She wore a torn gown of white, stained at the hem with old blood. Her eyes were hollow pools of light. "Geralt," she whispered, voice trembling with sorrow and rage. "You walk among the guilty." The Witcher's grip tightened. "Who are you?" Once I had a name, she said. Now I am the White Knight. The snow rose in a sudden gust, swirling around her. For an instant he saw faces within it, men and women, mouths open in silent screams. Then the vision vanished, leaving only her and the cold. Geralt raised his sword, its silver edge glinting. Tell me what binds you here. The spirit tilted her head. Blood, lies, a promise broken beneath a moon of white. The keep stands on stolen graves, Witcher, the innocent cry for reckoning. Her voice grew colder, sharper. She must confess, or all shall be claimed by the night. The snow surged upward and the figure dissolved into mist. The wind howled once more across the battlefield, carrying with it a faint echo of her voice. Confession or death. When silence returned, Geralt stood alone beneath the rising moon. The snow around him shimmered with spectral light, and where the spirit had stood, the ice had melted in a perfect circle. He sheathed his sword slowly, eyes dark with thought. Whatever haunted this land was no mindless wraith. It had purpose, memory, vengeance, and a secret that reached deep into the heart of Voivode Keep. Geralt mounted Roach and turned back toward the fortress. Behind him the snow began to fall again, soft and soundless, covering the footprints of the dead. Geralt returned to Voivode Keep under a sky washed in pale silver. The moon had risen, a perfect white disk, its light turning the snow to crystal. He rode slowly, his mind occupied by the words of the spirit. She must confess, or all shall be claimed by the night. He had seen wraiths of many kinds, noon wraiths born of betrayal, night wraiths from lost love, penitent ghosts chained by guilt. But this was something older, stronger. The White Knight was bound not to one death but to many, to an act so vile the land itself remembered. The gates creaked open at his approach. The guards stared as he dismounted, their eyes wide, as though they already knew he had looked upon the curse and lived. He gave no word to them and went straight to the hall. Lady Elena awaited him by the hearth, the fire's light casting her face in sharp relief, beauty edged with exhaustion. The steward lingered behind her, silent as a shadow. "You've been to the field," she said, her voice a thread of composure, "and you've seen it." "I have," Geralt replied. He took a seat, resting his gloved hands on the table between them. "It isn't a simple haunting. The spirit isn't lost. It remembers. It speaks." The lady's eyes flickered. "What does it want?" "Justice," the Witcher said flatly. "And confession." She drew a slow breath. "Then it cannot be appeased? I've confessed my sins 100 times to priests, to myself. Whatever that thing is, it lies." Geralt's tone did not soften. "This isn't about penance whispered to walls. It's bound to truth. Someone at this keep carries a secret buried with the dead. Until it's spoken, no rite or prayer will end it." The steward shifted uneasily. "Witcher, you speak of blasphemy. The lady has done nothing." Geralt's gaze cut to him, quiet and sharp. "Save it. The dead don't rise without cause." The fire crackled. For a long time no one spoke. Finally, Lady Elena rose and turned toward the window. Outside, the snow shimmered faintly in the moonlight, the color of bone. "When the war came," she said at last, her voice low, "Voivode was a sanctuary. Refugees from the villages fled here, begging for protection. But we had no food, no medicine. My husband feared a revolt, and I feared the Nilfgaardians would find us if we harbored them." Her words faltered. Geralt waited. "So," she whispered, "I ordered the gates closed. We turned them away. They camped in the fields in the snow. Some begged to be let in, others tried to climb the walls. The guards struck them down, and when the storm came, her hand trembled. They froze where they fell. We buried them beneath the drifts, and when spring thawed, we said nothing. Geralt's eyes did not move from her face. How many? Dozens, she said, perhaps more. Men, women, children. One of them was a healer named Mirena. She'd come to tend the sick. She begged for mercy. Her voice grew hoarse. I refused her. My husband struck her down himself. The Witcher's expression hardened. Then the spirit's name is known, Mirena. She wasn't lying. Lady Elena turned, her face pale as parchment. Can it be undone? Perhaps, Geralt said, but it'll demand a reckoning. The spirit said, confession or death. You've confessed. Now we see if it's enough. The steward blanched. You'd bring that thing here, into the keep. Geralt rose. It's already here. It never left. As if in answer, a gust of wind swept through the hall, snuffing the torches. The fire guttered low. A cold blue glow seeped through the cracks in the shutters. The lady gasped. She comes. Geralt drew his silver sword, its edge catching the moonlight. Stay behind me. The air thickened. Frost bloomed across the stones, creeping upward like veins of glass. Then the hall doors burst open, and the wind roared in, a storm of snow and shadow. Within it, the ghostly shape took form, the woman in white, her hair floating like smoke, her eyes two pale fires. Mirena, Geralt said evenly, your killer stands before you. The specter's voice echoed like a song sung through ice. Too long have I waited beneath your silence, Lady of Voivode. Too long have I watched the snow remember what you would forget. Lady Elena sank to her knees. I am sorry. I am so sorry. Sorry, the spirit whispered. Cannot warm the dead. The temperature plummeted. Frost raced up the walls, freezing banners where they hung. The guards at the doors shouted in terror as their blades turned brittle with rime. Geralt moved forward, signs crackling from his hands. Ard! He shouted, and a blast of air tore through the mist, forcing the spirit back. She screamed, the sound splintering the air, but reformed, her rage swelling. You cannot banish me, Witcher, she hissed, not while her heart beats unpunished. Geralt braced himself. I don't intend to banish you, but the curse ends tonight, one way or another. He turned toward Lady Elena, whose face was a mask of despair. There's one path left, he said. You can face her truth, or she'll take everything, your men, your lands, your soul. Tears froze on her cheeks. She looked up at the specter, and her voice broke. Mirena, I wronged you. I chose fear over mercy. If you demand my life, take it, but release the rest. The spirit's light flared brighter, so bright it turned the hall to white. Then slowly, her form began to change. Her face no longer twisted with wrath, but marked with grief. I came not for vengeance, she said softly, only for remembrance. Let the truth be known that the snow was not pure, but stained. Let the dead rest knowing they are not forgotten. Geralt stepped between them, his medallion thrumming. Then speak your last, spirit, and be free. The White Knight turned to Lady Elena. You must tell the world what you buried in the snow. I will, she swore. By the gods, I will. The light pulsed once, twice, and then the spirit dissolved into 1,000 drifting flakes that melted as they touched the floor. The air grew still. The frost began to retreat. Geralt lowered his sword. The hall was silent except for the soft crackle of the rekindled fire. Lady Elena rose slowly, dazed, her eyes hollow but alive. Is it over? Almost, Geralt said. You've told the truth, but truth has a price. He turned to the steward, who was staring wide-eyed at the floor. There, where the spirit had vanished, lay a small silver locket, its surface etched with a falcon and a lily. Geralt picked it up and placed it in Elena's hands. For remembrance, he said, keep it safe. The dead have been heard. She clutched it to her breast. Thank you, Witcher. He said nothing, only sheathed his blade and walked toward the door. Outside, the storm had passed. The moon rode high, casting long, sharp shadows across the courtyard. For the first time in weeks, the air did not hum with dread. The white night had lifted. Geralt mounted Roach. Behind him the keep stood silent, the banners still. Ahead lay the open road, pale and endless beneath the moon. He touched the falcon talisman still hanging at his belt. The metal was warm now, its curse spent. He glanced back once more at Voivode Keep, where one woman's guilt had nearly damned a whole land. Then he urged Roach onward, into the snow and the night. And as he rode, he thought, not for the first time, that monsters were seldom born from darkness alone. More often they came from men and the silence of their sins. The morning after the curse was broken dawned gray and windless. The snow lay thick upon the valley, glinting faintly beneath the hesitant light. Geralt rode from the keep at a steady pace, the air sharp in his lungs, his thoughts heavy as stone. He did not look back. He rarely did. The work was done, the dead appeased, the guilty left to reckon with what remained. Yet the silence pressed on him all the same. He followed the river road toward the south, where rumor spoke of skellies haunting the moors and a griffin seen near the ruins of an old watchtower. Coin would come from somewhere. It always did. But for the moment he rode simply to be away from walls and whispers. By midday he stopped at a small village crouched beneath a hill. Smoke rose thinly from a few chimneys, and half the houses leaned under the weight of snow. He dismounted outside the tavern, a crooked building called the Owl and Hammer, and led Roach to the trough. Inside, warmth and the smell of stew greeted him. The innkeeper, a stout woman with a gray kerchief and quick eyes, stared as he entered, then nodded toward the fire. "You've the look of one who's met a winter worse than this," she said. Geralt took a seat. "You could say that." She ladled stew into a bowl and slid it across the counter. 2 crowns? He paid without protest and ate quietly. The food was simple, turnips, barley, scraps of venison, but it filled the hollow in his stomach. When he'd finished, the innkeeper leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You're the witcher who broke the curse at Voivode, aren't you?" Geralt's spoon paused midway to the bowl. "Word travels fast." "Faster than the wind," she said. "Folks say the lady's gone mad. Wanders the keep talking to ghosts that aren't there." He said nothing, only set the bowl aside. "She sent riders to the towns," the woman continued, telling of what she'd done. Said the White Knight was her doing, that she'd condemned the innocent. Some don't believe her, but others want blood for blood. Geralt's jaw tightened. "They won't find justice in vengeance." The innkeeper shrugged. "They'll find satisfaction, and that's enough for most." He stood, slinging his sword belt over his shoulder. "Thanks for the meal." "Where will you go?" she asked. "Where there's work." Outside the day had dimmed, clouds drawing low and heavy. He'd gone no more than half a mile from the village when he heard the thunder of hooves. 3 riders approached from the east, cloaks bearing the colors of Voivode. The lead man lifted a hand. Witcher, by order of Lady Elena, you are summoned back to the keep. Geralt frowned. Tell her the curse is done. She owes me no more coin. She insists, the man said, his breath misting in the cold. Says it's urgent, something you left unfinished. The Witcher considered, then nodded once. Very well. They rode back through the thickening snow. The keep's walls appeared again, black and silent against the horizon. The portcullis was raised, the courtyard empty save for a single figure waiting by the gate. It was the steward, pale and trembling. She's not herself, Witcher, he whispered. Since the curse was lifted, she sees things, speaks to the air. I begged her to rest, but she claims Marena still calls her name. Geralt said nothing. He entered the hall, where the fire burned low and the smell of incense hung heavy. Lady Elena stood before the hearth, hair loose, eyes shadowed. Witcher, she said softly, you returned. You sent for me, he replied. Yes, I thought it was over, but last night I dreamed of her again. Marena. She stood by my bed and said the snow was not yet clean. Geralt's medallion quivered faintly. He stepped closer. There's no curse left to bind her, unless something keeps her tethered. Elena's gaze dropped to the locket at her throat, the one he had given her. Since I wear this, she whispered, the voices grow louder. Geralt held out a hand. Let me see it. She hesitated, then unclasped the chain. The moment the locket touched his palm, his medallion thrummed sharply. The metal was cold, too cold, even for winter. A faint shimmer of frost clung to its surface. This wasn't hers, Geralt said. It belonged to one of the dead. You've bound her spirit to yourself. Elena recoiled. No. You said it was for remembrance. I said keep it safe, Geralt cut in. I didn't say keep it close. He drew a sign in the air. Blue light flickered between his fingers. The locket pulsed once, then cracked with a brittle sound. A wisp of white mist escaped it, curling upward like breath. From that mist formed the faint outline of a woman's face. Sad, weary, but peaceful now. Thank you, the whisper came, almost too soft to hear. Then it was gone, fading into the rafters like a sigh. The lady sank to her knees, tears on her cheeks. Is she free? Yes, Geralt said quietly. Now she is. He turned to leave, but the steward stepped into his path. You cannot go, he said, voice trembling but resolute. The people will come. They know what the lady confessed. They'll demand justice. Geralt's hand rested lightly on his sword hilt. If they come for her life, they'll find it's not theirs to take. The man's gaze flicked to the lady. She doesn't want protection. She's ready to face them. Geralt looked at her. Elena met his eyes, calm now, her voice steady though faint. I won't hide, Witcher. The White Knight is gone, but my sins remain. I'll answer for them. He studied her a moment longer, then inclined his head. Then may you find peace in the truth. By the next morning the villagers came, men and women from the borderlands wrapped in furs, carrying torches. They gathered in the courtyard, their faces hard and cold. Geralt watched from the shadows near the gate. Lady Elena stood before them without crown or sword, her breath clouding the air. I am guilty, she said, and I am sorry. There was no plea, no defense, only the truth laid bare as the snow beneath her feet. Some shouted, others wept. No hand was raised. The mob's anger, fierce at first, faltered before her quiet resolve. One by one, they lowered their torches. When it was over, Elena returned to the keep alone. Geralt mounted Roach and rode away for the last time. At the crest of the hill, he looked back once more. The keep's walls gleamed faintly under the wan light, untouched by the curse or the storm. The land was silent, not with fear, but with rest. He turned his gaze toward the distant road where the horizon blurred into snow and sky. Another contract awaited somewhere beyond that pale line, another beast, another village, another story. For now, the Witcher rode on, the white wolf beneath the white sun, leaving behind the whispers of the white night and the ghosts it had finally laid to rest. The sun had long since sunk behind the western ridges when Geralt reached the frozen valley that marked the edge of Temeria's northern frontier. The road was little more than a pale scar through the drifts, winding between skeletal trees that glittered with frost. The wind carried the scent of pine and iron, a sign that the Yaruga lay near. He urged Roach forward, her breath steaming in the chill, hooves muffled by snow. The night was clear, the sky strewn with stars like shards of broken glass. The Witcher rode without haste, for he felt no hurry now. The cursed Voivode was ended, its echoes quiet at last. Yet even so, his thoughts were restless. The memory of the White Knight lingered like a stain, proof once more that men's deeds often bred darker things than monsters ever could. He rode until he came to a bend in the river where an old watchtower stood. The stones were cracked and half swallowed by ivy, its shadow long and thin against the snow. A campfire burned near its base, small but steady. Geralt's keen eyes caught the silhouettes of 3 men beside it, and the glint of metal. He slowed Roach's pace. "Evening?" he called, his voice calm but firm. The men turned. Their faces were rough, wind-burned, their armor mismatched and poorly kept. Soldiers once by the look of them, now deserters or worse. The leader, a thick-set man with a patch over one eye, grinned through broken teeth. "Evening, traveler. Cold night to be out alone." "I could say the same," Geralt replied. "Ah, but we've company and fire." The man's grin widened. "You've the look of one with coin. Perhaps you'd share a little warmth for your purse?" Geralt dismounted slowly, his hand never straying far from the hilt of his steel sword. "Perhaps you'd earn it then." The man's grin faded. "We don't work for it, Witcher. We take what we need." The sound of steel left its scabbard, 3 blades drawn almost in unison. Geralt sighed softly, more weariness than fear. "Bad choice," he murmured. The first man lunged. Geralt sidestepped, his motion fluid as water, and the sword in his hand flashed once, silver under starlight. The deserter fell, a red bloom spreading across the snow. The others hesitated, eyes wide. One swung wildly, the other tried to circle. Geralt parried, kicked, turned, and the fight was over in moments. When the last man fell still, Geralt cleaned his blade on the snow. He searched their packs. Bread gone stale, a flask of sour ale, a few coins, and 1 letter sealed with a crude mark, a griffin's head. He pocketed the coins and the letter both, a griffin's head. Perhaps mere coincidence, perhaps not. He broke the seal and read. The parchment was rough, the ink smeared, but the words were clear enough. "To all who serve in the company of the Iron Griffin, meet at dawn by the ruins of Belhaven Tower. The beast has returned to its nest, and the reward is promised. 100 crowns for the head. Bring proof, or bring nothing at all." Geralt folded the letter thoughtfully. A griffin, then. It would seem work found him sooner than expected. He buried the bodies beneath the snow, doused their fire, and mounted Roach once more. The ruins of Belhaven Tower lay 2 leagues south by his reckoning. He could reach them before dawn, if the weather held. As he rode, the wind picked up, carrying faint howls through the trees. Wolves, perhaps, though the pitch of the sound made his skin prickle. The air grew sharper, the stars dimmer, the forest thickened around him, closing like the jaws of some vast beast. By the time the first gray light crept into the sky, he reached a rise overlooking a clearing. There, half buried in snow, stood what remained of Belhaven Tower. The top had long since fallen, its stones scattered across the ground, but the base still held, black and square against the dawn. Smoke rose from the clearing below, thin and pale. 3 tents, a tethered horse, and a makeshift pyre stood there. Beside the pyre lay a shape, huge, feathered, and unmistakable, a griffin, its wings spread in frozen glory, its golden eyes dull. Geralt dismounted and approached. The camp stirred. A tall man in a dark cloak turned to face him, his beard rimed with frost. "Witcher?" the man said with a nod. "Didn't expect company." "Nor did I," Geralt replied, eyes flicking to the griffin's carcass. "You killed it?" The man's lips curved in a small, humorless smile. "Aye, or what's left of us did. Cost us 5 men, but the job's done. We wait for the Crown's men to verify the kill." Geralt crouched beside the beast. The cuts were deep, crude, axe wounds and spear thrusts. Yet the angle of the blood spatter and the stiff posture told another story. He touched the feathers, then the wound near the heart. No heat, no signs of struggle near the pyre. "You didn't kill it here," he said quietly. "And this wound? No human blade did this." The man stiffened. "What are you implying?" "That you found it dead," Geralt said, rising. "And now you mean to sell the story." The tall man's hand dropped to his sword. "You calling me a liar, mutant?" "I'm calling you a fool," Geralt answered. "Whatever killed this griffin is still nearby." A sound tore through the air then, half roar, half scream. The snow around them shuddered as wings the size of sails burst from the trees. The real griffin, larger, older, its feathers streaked with gray, dived from the sky. "Down!" Geralt shouted, rolling aside as the creature struck the camp. 1 tent went up in flames as its claws ripped through the pyre, scattering sparks. The tall man screamed, half his arm gone in a single swipe. Geralt drew silver, signs flaring around him. "Igni!" A plume of fire burst forth, searing the beast's flank. It shrieked and wheeled upward, beating the air with thunderous wings. Snow exploded in every direction. The Witcher leapt onto a fallen stone and watched its path. The griffin circled once, twice, then dived again. He waited until the last moment, then leapt aside, driving his blade upward. The silver edge sliced into the soft flesh beneath its jaw. Blood sprayed, hot and steaming. The creature crashed to the ground, flailing, screeching. Geralt drove the sword deeper, twisted, and the sound ended in a low, gurgling sigh. Silence returned, broken only by the hiss of fire dying in the snow. The tall man lay motionless, eyes open to the gray sky. The others were gone. Geralt wiped his blade clean and sheathed it. "You should have listened," he muttered. He cut the griffin's talon, a hunter's proof, and placed it in his pouch. When he turned, the first light of dawn was spilling across the valley, painting the snow with faint gold. Another beast slain, another tale ended. Yet as he looked upon the ruins, black against the rising sun, he thought again of Voivode and the white night, the way even truth could leave a shadow. He mounted Roach and rode on, the cold wind tugging at his cloak. Behind him, smoke rose from the ruined camp, curling skyward like a final breath. Ahead lay the road and whatever waited upon it. For a witcher, the path never truly ended. There was always another curse to break, another creature to face, another ghost, human or otherwise, to set free. And so Geralt of Rivia rode on beneath the pale winter sun, the world silent, but for the steady rhythm of hooves in snow and the whisper of steel at his side. By the time Geralt reached the small hamlet of Draven, dusk had begun its slow descent. The last blush of sunlight bled across the western horizon, turning the frozen fields into sheets of dull gold. A faint mist crept from the riverbanks, carrying the scent of smoke and wet pine. Roach trudged wearily through the mud-caked road, her breath curling like mist in the fading light. The village itself was little more than a handful of cottages clustered around a central square. At its heart stood a shrine to Melitele, its paint flaking and candles long burned to stubs. Geralt dismounted and tied Roach to a post beside the well, then glanced toward the tavern. A crooked sign swayed above the door, creaking softly in the wind. The Golden Plough, it read, though no part of it seemed golden anymore. Inside the tavern was dim and close, with the smell of smoke and ale. A fire smoldered in the hearth, giving off more smoke than heat. The handful of patrons looked up as he entered, eyes wary. He'd grown used to that look, curiosity edged with fear. The cat eyes always gave him away, no matter how quietly he moved. The innkeeper, a thin man with a bald pate and a nervous smile, wiped his hands on a rag as Geralt approached. "Evening, Witcher. Don't see many of your kind this far north. What'll it be?" "Beer," Geralt said, "and information." The man poured from a battered keg, slid the mug across the counter. "Information costs more than beer." "Then I'll pay for both." The innkeeper hesitated, then nodded. "Fair enough. What do you want to know?" Geralt took a slow sip, letting the bitter foam settle. "Any contracts, beasts, hauntings, curses, things of that nature?" The man's eyes darted toward a pair of old farmers at a nearby table. One of them, a stooped man with a milky eye, spat into the fire. "You'll find no beasts here, Witcher. Not the kind that bleed, anyway." Geralt turned slightly toward him. "Go on." The old man scowled. "There's a barrow east of the village, half buried in snow. We used to leave offerings there. Grain, milk, flowers in summer. Old custom, nothing more. But a month passed, a shepherd's daughter went there after dark. She never came back." "Barrow white?" Geralt asked. The man shrugged. "Could be. Could be worse. We hear voices on the wind at night now. We've stopped going near the place." Geralt drained the mug and set it down. "I'll look into it." The innkeeper's hand twitched. "If you must, but don't expect thanks. Folk here prefer their ghosts left alone." "Ghosts seldom return the favor," Geralt said quietly, rising. He left the tavern, the door creaking shut behind him. Night had fully claimed the sky, and the first stars trembled in the black above. The wind carried a strange whisper, faint, broken, as if words tried to form and failed. His medallion quivered once, then stilled. The barrow lay a half-hour's walk east, across the frozen moors. The land sloped downward into a shallow hollow where a mound rose, covered in snow and ringed by dead willows. Geralt approached slowly, scanning the ground for tracks. He found none, but the snow was too fresh to hold them. At the top of the mound stood a crude stone altar, cracked by frost, a Upon it lay the remains of an offering, wilted flowers, a wooden bowl filled with ice, and the bones of a small bird. He crouched, tracing a finger through the frost. The air here felt wrong, thick, heavy, tainted with the tang of old magic. He whispered a sign, and a soft blue glow pulsed from his palm. The light revealed faint runes carved into the stones, nearly lost beneath moss and age. He recognized the script, ancient elder speech, a ward of binding. Someone had sealed something here, and something had broken free. The wind shifted, carrying a faint sob. Geralt rose, sword in hand. "Show yourself." A pale shimmer formed at the edge of the mound, a figure faint as moonlight drifting toward him. A young woman's shape, her face delicate and sorrowful. Her eyes glowed like frost fire. "Who disturbs my rest?" she whispered. "I do," Geralt said evenly. "Geralt of Rivia, I'm here to learn why you haunt this place." Her expression darkened. "They took everything from me, my love, my life, my name. They buried me in the cold earth, and still they bring offerings, as if kindness now could cleanse their crime." "Who buried you?" "The villagers," she said, her voice trembling. "I was to wed a shepherd, but the Baron's men came. They said my blood was cursed, that I brought death with my birth. They cast me into the pit, alive." Geralt's jaw tightened. "And now you seek vengeance." "I seek remembrance," she murmured, "but their fear feeds me. It keeps me bound." He stepped closer, careful, his sword still lowered. "Then release it. Let go. You don't belong here." The spirit's gaze turned hollow. "I cannot. The stone binds me still. The Baron carved his mark into it before I died. His curse and mine are one." Geralt studied the runes again. Yes, among the elder symbols, one mark stood newer, cruder, the sigil of House Velen, a minor noble line long fallen into ruin. "Your Baron," he said quietly, "was he of Velen?" The ghost nodded. "He lies now in his manor on the hill, unburied by his own kin. I hear his laughter even in death." Geralt sheathed his sword. "Then I'll pay him a visit." The spirit inclined her head. "Break the mark, Witcher, and I will sleep. Fail, and I will haunt these fields until the stars fall." The wind scattered her form into mist. The night fell silent once more. Geralt turned toward the dark outline of the hills beyond. The manor would not be far. Ruins, most likely, half swallowed by snow and memory. He tightened his cloak and began to walk. The path wound upward through black trees, their limbs creaking in the cold. Once or twice he thought he heard footsteps behind him, but when he turned, only shadows moved. At last he saw it, the Baron's manor, its towers broken, its gates hanging like the jaws of a corpse. A faint light flickered within. Geralt approached, boots crunching softly. Inside, the hall stood empty, save for a long table covered in dust and cobwebs. The light came from a single candle burning beside a chair. Upon that chair sat the withered remains of a man, wrapped in what had once been finery. A ring of silver gleamed on his skeletal hand, engraved with the same sigil carved into the barrow stone. Geralt stepped closer, drew his silver sword, and with one swift stroke severed the ringed hand. The candle guttered. The shadows along the walls stirred. A hiss broke from the dark, and a figure rose behind the throne, a wraith, tall and twisted, its face the shriveled echo of the Baron's own. "Thief," it rasped. "Meddler, you would undo my will?" Geralt raised his blade. "You bound an innocent soul. That's not will, it's cowardice." The wraith lunged. The Witcher met it head on, silver flashing, signs blazing in his other hand. Círdan. He slammed the sign into the ground, and a circle of violet light burst forth, trapping the wraith within. It screamed, thrashing, its form distorting in agony. Geralt drove his blade through its heart. The scream rose, cracked, and vanished into silence. The light faded. He took the ring, crushed it under his boot, and watched the silver turn to dust. Then he turned back toward the barrow. When he returned, dawn was breaking. The first light touched the mound, and from it rose the spirit once more. Her face was calm now, her eyes no longer burning. "It is done," she whispered. Geralt nodded. "You're free." The ghost smiled faintly. "Thank you, White Wolf. May the wind carry your name kindly." Her form shimmered once, then dissolved with the dawn. Geralt stood alone on the hill as the snow began to fall again, soft and silent. Another curse broken, another story ended. But as he mounted Roach and rode from the valley, the thought came to him, as it always did, that the work never truly ended. The world's darkness could be slain one ghost at a time, yet it would always find new shapes to wear. He rode on beneath the pale sun, toward whatever waited beyond the next hill, his breath a mist, his heart steady, his path endless. The road turned south, winding through the lowlands where winter never quite loosened its grip. Geralt rode in silence, the steady rhythm of Roach's hooves his only companion. The forests here were dense, old, their trees twisted by age and wind. Ravens followed him from branch to branch, black eyes glinting with more intelligence than he liked. For 3 days he rode thus, stopping only to rest and eat. Villages were few, their people withdrawn, wary of travelers. News, when it came, spoke of famine to the east and war bands roaming the borderlands, of soldiers turned brigands and peasants turned corpses in the fields they once tilled. Geralt listened, as witchers always did, but his mind wandered to quieter things. The glint of steel in moonlight, the memory of faces long gone, the whisper of a certain sorceress's laughter on the wind. On the 4th day, as he neared the marshlands of Temin Vale, he found the path blocked. A wagon lay overturned, its axles splintered, the snow around it dark with blood. Crows scattered as he dismounted, their wings beating the air like tattered cloth. The horses were gone, but the bodies of 2 men lay near the wagon, their armor bearing the sigil of House Círdan, a minor noble family, one that ruled the nearby fief of Torvin Hollow. The tracks told the tale, a struggle, then something dragged them off the road into the reeds. Geralt crouched, fingertips brushing the frozen mud, clawed prints large as his palm. Too wide for wolves, too deep for men. He rose, drawing his steel sword. "Arrakis," he muttered, "or something worse." The reeds stirred. From the murk came a chittering sound, sharp and low, then another. The Witcher moved slowly, his steps deliberate, the sword steady before him. The marsh to his left erupted in a spray of water as the creature lunged. An enormous insectoid horror, its carapace glistening black-green, its mandibles clicking. Geralt rolled aside as it struck, its claws sinking into the snow where he had stood. He came up in a crouch, blade flashing, steel met shell, sparks bursting. The creature shrieked, rearing back. "Not an Arrakis," Geralt breathed. "Too lean, too fast." It came again, slashing with hooked forelimbs. Geralt caught one blow on his sword, turned and thrust hard beneath its thorax. The blade sank deep, but not deep enough. The beast bellowed, ichor spilling hot and foul. He drew a sign in the air. "Igni!" Flame roared forth. licking the creature's shell. It screamed and thrashed, retreating into the reeds. Geralt followed at a careful distance, his boots sinking into the half-frozen muck. The trail of black blood led him to a low mound of roots and reeds, a nest. Inside lay bones, armor, and the remains of men. But what caught his eye was a child, alive, huddled near the back, eyes wide with terror. "Easy," Geralt said, sheathing his sword. "I won't hurt you." The boy flinched, but did not run. "It took my father," he whispered. "He said he'd keep it away." "But the beast—" His voice broke. Geralt's medallion thrummed. The creature was close. "Stay behind me," he said. The boy nodded, trembling. The reeds parted, and the creature charged again. Geralt met it head-on, this time with silver drawn. The sword bit deep into its eye, and the monster convulsed. He ripped the blade free and struck again, clean through the neck. The head fell with a wet crunch, the body twitching before it lay still. Silence, only the wind and the boy's soft sobs. Geralt wiped his blade clean on the beast's shell, then turned. "Your name?" "Edric," the boy whispered. "Edric of Círdan?" The child nodded. "My father was Lord Halric. We were going to the keep at Torvin. He said we'd be safe there." Geralt looked toward the horizon, where faint smoke curled above the trees. "The keep's not far. Can you walk?" "Yes." "Then we go." He took the boy's hand and led him from the marsh. They reached Roach at dusk, the sky stained crimson. Geralt lifted the child onto the saddle and followed on foot. The road curved through a shallow pass, and soon the black silhouette of Torvin Keep rose ahead, a squat fortress of stone and timber, its walls glistening with frost. As they approached, the gates opened. Guards hurried out, their torches flickering. When they saw the boy, their faces went pale. "By the gods," one whispered, "it's the Lord's son." Inside, they were met by Lady Mariel, a tall woman with streaks of silver in her hair. Her eyes widened as she saw the child. "Edric, blessed Melitele." She knelt, gathering him in her arms. Then her gaze rose to Geralt. "Witcher, what happened?" "Your husband's convoy was ambushed, a marsh beast, dead now. He didn't survive." The lady's expression broke. "Halric?" Geralt bowed his head. "He fought bravely." She swallowed her grief and straightened. "You have my thanks, Witcher. You saved my son. I did what needed doing." "You'll stay the night," she said, "please. There's coin and warmth and food enough." Geralt hesitated, then nodded. "Very well." The great hall of Torvin Keep was warmer than any place he'd been in months. A fire roared in the hearth, and servants brought bread, stew, and ale. Geralt ate in silence while the lady saw her son to rest. When she returned, her eyes were shadowed, but resolute. "There's more you should know," she said, sitting across from him. "The beast you slew is not the only one. They've been nesting in the marshes for weeks. We've sent men, but none return." Geralt's gaze sharpened. "How many?" "Too many. Something drives them from the deeper bogs. My scouts speak of a sickness spreading through the waters. Fish dead, trees rotting where they stand." "Rot-fiend corruption," Geralt murmured. "Or worse," she nodded slowly. "I'll pay you handsomely to find the source, Witcher, whatever it takes." Geralt finished his drink. "I'll look at dawn." That night he lay awake in the chamber they'd given him, listening to the wind rattle the shutters. He could smell the marsh even here, the rot beneath the snow, the faint stench of decay. His medallion pulsed again, faint but steady. Something old stirred beyond the walls of the keep, something that did not belong. Before dawn he rose, strapped on his armor, and made ready. The sky was a dull iron gray as he rode toward the marshlands once more. Crows followed him again, circling overhead. He reached the edge of the bog as the sun broke weakly over the horizon. The air was thick with mist, the water black beneath its crust of ice. He saw no beasts, but the silence was heavier than before. He dismounted and knelt by the water's edge. The surface bubbled faintly, as though something beneath breathed. He dipped a finger in, then drew it out quickly. The water hissed, burning his skin like acid. "Not rot," he murmured. "Alchemy." He looked deeper into the mist and saw faint glimmers of light, green, flickering, unnatural. A laboratory, perhaps, or the remnants of one. Someone had poisoned this land. The marsh rippled suddenly. From the center, a shape rose. Massive, hulking, dripping black filth. Not a beast, not wholly. Its body was half man, half monster, its face twisted beyond recognition. It moved with the staggering gait of one long dead, yet not gone. A cursed thing, born of magic and malice. Geralt drew silver, the blade whispering free. "So, this is your nest." The creature opened its mouth and screamed, a sound that seemed to come from the earth itself. Geralt's eyes narrowed. "Let's finish this." The dawn broke behind him as he stepped into the mist, and the clash of steel and shadow echoed across the marshes like thunder. The mist thickened as Geralt advanced, rolling across the frozen bog like a living thing. Each step sank into mud and half-frozen water. The smell of rot and old blood hung thick in the air, mingling with the acrid sting of alchemical residue. The creature before him moved with an ungainly grace, its massive limbs dragging through the mire, its flesh gleaming like wet stone. Up close, he could see the corruption that marked it. Veins glowing faintly green beneath the skin, as though something burned within. Bones warped by mutation. It had once been a man, perhaps. A hunter, a soldier, maybe even one of the Baron's men. But that humanity was long gone. Geralt's medallion vibrated hard enough to sting his chest. He steadied his breath, sword raised. "A cursed one," he murmured, "or worse." The beast lunged without warning, the water exploding around it. Geralt rolled aside, the claws raking air where he had stood. He slashed low, cutting deep into the thigh. The wound hissed, but instead of blood, a dark ichor spilled, steaming as it touched the snow. The monster howled, the sound carrying across the marsh like a wounded bell. It swung a massive arm. Geralt ducked, sliced upward, severing fingers. The claws hit the ground with a wet thud. The creature reeled, stumbling back, and he saw then the faint remnants of armor fused to its hide. A breastplate melted into its chest, a helm half swallowed by flesh. "Experiment," Geralt muttered grimly. "Someone's work." He drew a sign with his free hand. "Urden." A circle of violet light flared on the ground, its runes pulsing. The creature stumbled into it, slowed, its strength sapped by the binding spell. Geralt took the opening, drove his blade through its ribs, and twisted. The beast shuddered, fell to its knees, and collapsed into the mire. Its body convulsed once, twice, then went still. Geralt stood over it, breathing hard, the steam from his breath mingling with the rising mist. When he withdrew the blade, a faint pulse of green light flickered within the wound, then died. He crouched, pried open the creature's chest with a dagger, and found a crystal shard embedded near the heart, a focus stone used in forbidden alchemical rites. He pocketed it and rose. "Someone made you," he said quietly to the corpse. "And if they made one, they can make more." The thought drove him onward. He followed the trail of corruption deeper into the marsh, where the mist glowed faintly green and the air grew thick with decay. Half an hour later, he came upon the ruins, a crumbling watchtower, half sunken into the mire, its stones blackened by fire. Strange symbols marked the walls, drawn in ash and blood. He tethered Roach at the edge of the clearing and approached on foot. The door hung ajar. Inside, the air was warm, unnaturally so. He smelled burned herbs, sulfur, and death. The chamber beyond was lit by green fire. At its center stood a stone table cluttered with vials and instruments. A man hunched over it, robed in tattered cloth, his hair wild and streaked with white. His back was to the Witcher. "You've been busy," Geralt said. The man froze. Then he turned, and Geralt saw the eyes, bright, fevered, and wrong. "Witcher," the alchemist rasped, "I wondered when one of your kind would come. You smell the magic, don't you? The perfection of it." "Perfection?" Geralt's voice was cold. "You're poisoning the land. You turned men into monsters." "They were dying already," the man snapped. "This land was dying. I gave them strength, purpose." "You gave them torment." The alchemist smiled thinly. "You can't stop what's begun. The seed is sown. The water carries it. Soon all this marsh will breathe as one, living, eternal." Geralt drew steel. "Not if I burn it first." The man lifted his hand, chanting words in elder speech. The fire flared green, bursting into a storm of light. Shapes crawled from the corners, half-formed things of bone and slime, their bodies pulsing like hearts. Geralt stepped back, signs ready. "Igni!" Flames roared from his palm, sweeping across the room. The creatures shrieked, their bodies bursting into smoke. The alchemist screamed, shielding his face. Geralt charged through the blaze, blade flashing. The man drew a dagger glowing with the same sickly light and parried, sparks flying. He was faster than he looked, his movements fueled by alchemy's madness. They traded blows, steel against steel, light against shadow. Geralt feinted left, then caught the man's arm and twisted. The dagger fell. The Witcher drove his sword through the alchemist's chest. For a heartbeat, the man's expression softened, almost peaceful. "You don't understand," he whispered, blood on his lips. "It's not me. It's beneath." "Beneath what?" The man smiled faintly. "The water." Then he fell still. The flames had begun to consume the tower. Smoke curled up through the cracks in the roof. Geralt searched quickly, finding parchments covered in notes and diagrams, symbols of transformation, drawings of the marsh, references to something ancient buried below. He gathered what he could and fled into the cold air. Outside, the sky had turned iron gray again. The tower burned behind him, its reflection rippling in the black water. He mounted Roach and turned toward Torvin Keep. As he rode, the wind carried faint whispers, voices that seemed to rise from the marsh itself, echoing the alchemist's last words. Beneath the water. By the time he reached the keep, the sun had set. Lady Marielle met him at the gate, her face pale. "Witcher, you found something?" "An alchemist," Geralt said. "Dead now, he was behind the creatures. But he spoke of something older, something under the marsh." Her eyes widened. "Under?" "There are ruins there, ancient, from before the conjunction. My husband forbade anyone to go near them." "Your husband's dead," Geralt said grimly, "and something's waking." She gripped her cloak tighter. "Will it come here?" "Not yet," he said, "but it will if I don't stop it." He handed her the bundle of notes. "Keep these locked away, burn them if you must, and send your people from the marshlands." She nodded, fear clouding her face. What will you do? Geralt looked toward the dark horizon where the mist glowed faintly green. Go back. Find what sleeps beneath the water, and make sure it never wakes again. That night he sat in the courtyard sharpening his blades. The wind carried the smell of the marsh on it, faint, poisonous, alive. Somewhere in that black expanse lay the heart of the curse, older than the alchemist's madness, deeper than any swamp. He had seen such things before, magic that survived centuries, waiting for a fool to stir it. But few men were fools enough to dig where the earth itself whispered no. He sheathed the blades and stood. The moon had risen, pale and cold, casting silver light over the stones. Tomorrow he would return to the marsh, and there, beneath the water, he would find the truth or die learning it. Before dawn, the Witcher was already in the saddle. The mist that rose from the marshlands clung to the earth like the breath of sleeping beasts. The air was still, heavy with the scent of decay. He followed the old road south, where the swamp deepened into a mire of black pools and gnarled trees. Crows wheeled overhead, their calls sharp and restless. Even they seemed uneasy. Geralt rode until the path disappeared beneath water, then dismounted and led Roach to higher ground. Stay, he murmured, patting her flank. You wouldn't like what's waiting. The horse snorted softly, as if in understanding. He pressed onward on foot, boots sinking into cold mud. The mist thickened, swallowing sound and shape alike. His medallion trembled. There was power here, ancient, wild, buried deep. Not chaos magic, not sorcery, but something older, born of the land itself. After an hour's trek, he found the ruins the lady had spoken of. Half submerged in the marsh, a ring of standing stones jutted from the water, etched with symbols worn smooth by time. Between them yawned a pit of black water that reflected no light. It seemed bottomless, an open wound at the earth. Geralt circled the stones, studying the runes. They were elder in origin, yes, but the pattern was wrong. Fragments of different scripts, layered and broken, as though something had tried to rewrite itself through them. He touched one with his gloved hand. The stone pulsed faintly beneath his fingers, and a whisper brushed his mind. Not a voice exactly, more like the echo of thought. Leave. Geralt drew back. You'll have to do better than that, he said quietly. He unpacked his satchel and took out a small vial of cat's potion, the liquid glowing faintly blue. He uncorked it, drank, and waited. The world brightened at once. Colors deepened, shadows thinned. The black water ahead began to glow faintly, veins of greenish light winding beneath the surface like roots. Something moved down there. He knelt and unrolled a parchment, the alchemist's notes. They spoke of a heart buried under the marsh, a remnant of the conjunction, neither beast nor god. The alchemist had called it the sleeper. In the mire, he read the next line aloud, his voice low. It breathes through the water. It dreams through men. The wind shifted and the marsh sighed like a living thing. Geralt straightened, sword in hand. So you dream through men, he murmured. Then let's see whose dream ends first. He stepped to the edge and cast a bomb into the water. It sank with a hiss. A moment later, the swamp erupted, mud, water, and light bursting upward as the shock wave rolled through the ground. Something screamed below, deep, furious, ancient. The water churned violently, and then the surface split. A shape rose from the depths, vast and monstrous, covered in scales, slick with slime. Its form was not entirely real. It shimmered between flesh and shadow, as if the world itself resisted its presence. Dozens of eyes burned within the darkness of its skull, each staring in a different direction. Geralt braced himself, the ground trembling beneath his boots. He'd fought many things in his life, dragons, wraiths, cursed kings. But this was something else. The creature opened its maw and a voice echoed, not in sound, but in his mind. "Why wake me, Witcher? The world above is not yours to mend." Geralt grit his teeth, resisting the pressure behind his eyes. "You've poisoned half the marshlands. You've made beasts of men. I call that my concern. I was bound long before your kind learned to curse," the voice thundered. "They fed me blood and secrets until I slept. Now I hunger again. I will feed." The water around him began to boil. Shapes rose, twisted corpses, half men, half leeches, dripping black slime. The remains of the alchemist's experiments, now drawn by their maker's god. Geralt raised his hand. "Irden!" The ground flared with violet light. The nearest corpse lunged and froze mid-stride, its body crackling with energy. Geralt's blade flashed, severing its head. Another came from behind. He turned, sliced, ducked under a claw, and stabbed upward through its jaw. The beast in the water moved closer. A tendril of liquid shadow lashed out, striking the stones and shattering one to dust. Geralt rolled aside, the air ringing with the force of the blow. He grabbed a moon dust bomb, lit it, and hurled it toward the creature's center. The explosion tore through the mist, silver dust clinging to its form. The illusion flickered, revealing the truth beneath. The creature's heart, a pulsing core of green fire glowing within the water. "There you are," he growled. He drew his crossbow, loaded a bolt coated in relict oil, and fired. The shot struck the heart dead center. The creature roared, a sound that split the air and sent waves crashing against the stones. "You cannot kill what was never born." Geralt's lips curled into a grim smile. "Good thing I don't need to kill you." He hurled another bomb, this one demeridium. It burst in a flash of pale blue, the magic around the heart shattering like glass. The creature convulsed, its form unraveling. For an instant he saw within it countless faces, human, elven, even dwarven, trapped in the current of its being, all screaming as they dissolved. The pit of water began to collapse inward, swallowing itself. Geralt ran for the edge, leaping from stone to stone as the ruins crumbled. Behind him, the sound of rushing water became a roar. He reached solid ground and turned once more. The marsh glowed green, then dimmed, then went utterly dark. The air fell still. When the silence settled, he sheathed his sword and looked to the ruins. Only the faintest ripple marked where the pit had been. It was done, or so he thought. From the water's edge came a faint sound, soft, broken. A figure emerged from the reeds. It was the alchemist, or what remained of him. His body was pale, his veins black, eyes empty. "You didn't kill it," he rasped. "You gave it breath." Geralt drew steel again. "Not today." He struck once, clean and sure. The alchemist's head fell into the water with a dull splash. Geralt stood a long while, watching the ripples fade. "Now it's done," he said quietly. By the time he returned to Torvin Keep, the sun was setting again. Lady Marielle waited at the gate, her face drawn but hopeful. "Well?" "It's over," he said. "The marsh is clean, for now." "For now?" she echoed. He looked toward the horizon, where the swamp stretched endless and silent. "Things like that don't die. They sleep. Best let them sleep." She nodded, understanding enough. "Your payment will be prepared." He inclined his head. "Keep your coin. Use it to fortify the keep. You'll need it when the storms come." She looked at him strangely, but said nothing. He mounted Roach and turned south toward the dim line of the road. The sky burned red, fading to ash as night came on. Behind him the marsh lay still and silent. Ahead the world waited as it always did, dark, wide, and full of whispers. And Geralt of Rivia rode on, his silver sword gleaming faintly in the dying light, carrying with him the scent of fire and the memory of the thing that dreamed beneath the water. The wind had changed by morning. It came now from the south, heavy with the scent of rain and thaw, though the sky above remained a vault of gray. Geralt rode without haste, letting Roach pick her path along the sodden track that wound toward the foothills. The marshlands of Torvin were behind him now, still, but not silent. He could feel their presence even here, a shadow tugging faintly at his medallion, as if something far below still turned in uneasy dreams. He had ridden through worse lands, left darker places in his wake. Yet as the road climbed, he could not shake the feeling that the world itself held its breath. The trees here grew sparse, bent by years of wind, and the land opened into a valley scarred by old quarries and forgotten roads. On the horizon stood a fortress, crumbling walls wrapped in ivy, towers collapsed into heaps of stone. The locals called it Caer Durin, once a stronghold of witch hunters during the wars. Now it lay in ruin, avoided by all. Geralt had heard the tales, whispered in taverns, of fire that still burned beneath its cellars, of screams that echoed on moonless nights. He had ignored them before, but now the name came again, written in the notes he had taken from the alchemist's tower. The fire of Durin sleeps beneath the mire, bound by oath and ash. When the sleeper stirs, its breath will reach the stones again. Geralt had learned to heed such coincidences. He reined Roach at the edge of the valley and dismounted. From here, the wind carried the faintest trace of sulfur. The keep was miles from the marshes, yet the stench was the same. Whatever had poisoned the swamp had roots that reached farther than he'd thought. He led Roach to a sheltered grove and began the climb on foot. Snow and ash mixed beneath his boots. The closer he drew, the colder the air became, though no frost clung to the walls. The cold came from within. The gate was open. Beyond it, the courtyard lay buried under years of dust and ruin. Half-collapsed scaffolds leaned against blackened walls. A single banner, torn but still clinging to a tower, bore the symbol of the eternal fire. Geralt grimaced. Of course. He stepped through the courtyard. The silence was absolute. No birds, no wind, only the soft creak of wood settling. The Witcher's medallion began to hum again. The main hall's doors were half broken, but they yielded easily. Inside, the air stank of char and something else. Old blood soaked deep into the stone. The fire pits had gone cold centuries ago, yet faint embers glowed within them, unnatural and red. He drew his steel sword and advanced. "If you're here," he said softly, "best show yourself before I light this place properly." A laugh answered him, low, hollow, echoing from every corner at once. "Witcher," a voice murmured. "At last the hunter returns to the pyre." A figure stepped from the shadows at the far end of the hall. At first glance, it might have been a man, tall, robed in blackened vestments, a circlet of tarnished silver upon its brow, but the skin was gray as ash, the eyes burning coals. "Who are you?" Geralt asked. "I am what remains of those who sought purity," the creature said. "They burned all they found unclean, elves, mages, monsters, and when the fire turned on them, they begged their god for mercy. He gave them me. Geralt's grip tightened on the sword. Another curse, then. Not a curse, it hissed. A covenant. We burned the swamp to cleanse it, but the flame sank into the water. It found a heart there, a heart that beats still. You've stirred it, Witcher. Now it calls its fire home. Geralt's eyes narrowed. The sleeper? The creature smiled, revealing teeth blackened like coal. You woke it. Now it wakes me. The embers in the pits flared suddenly, flooding the hall with crimson light. The figure's shadow stretched across the stones, twisting, rising, splitting into many shapes. Faces formed within the firelight, screaming silently. Geralt stepped back, drawing a sign. Quen! Golden light shimmered around him as the first wave hit, flames bursting from the walls, spectral arms clawing at his shield. The impact threw him to one knee. He rolled aside as a bolt of fire struck the floor where he'd stood, the heat searing the air. His potion-laced blood dulled the pain, sharpened the world to razor clarity. The creature advanced, its form flickering between man and flame. Yrden! Geralt's sign flared violet, anchoring the spirit's form. He charged, blade cutting through smoke and shadow. The sword met resistance, flesh made of fire, and sparks flew. The creature shrieked, striking back with claws of molten light. The Quen sign shattered under the blow. Geralt staggered, barely deflecting the next strike. The sword's silver edge glowed red hot. He drove it forward with all his strength, straight through the creature's chest. For a heartbeat, the world froze. Then the fire burst outward, engulfing the hall. Geralt was thrown clear through the doorway, hitting the ground hard. He rolled, came up gasping, his cloak smoldering. Behind him, Caer Duran burned anew, fire spilling from every window like blood from a wound. He stared at the inferno, teeth clenched. The flames rose unnaturally fast, far brighter than mortal fire. The tower that bore the eternal fire's banner cracked and fell inward, vanishing in a storm of sparks. Something screamed within the blaze, a sound not of pain but of triumph. The ground trembled beneath his feet, and from deep below came a rumble like distant thunder. Geralt sheathed his sword. So that's how it is, he muttered. The fire and the water, two halves of the same rot. He turned from the ruins. There was nothing more to be done here. The corruption he'd thought slain had simply changed its shape, traded the stillness of the marsh for the hunger of flame. Whatever lay beneath the world, it was stirring faster now. He rode until night fell again, stopping by a stream that trickled through the forest. The stars were hidden by cloud. He built no fire. As he sat sharpening his blades, he could still see the red glow on the horizon where the fortress burned. When sleep finally claimed him, it was no rest at all. He dreamed of a sea of ash stretching endless, of towers rising from it like bones, and above it all two voices whispered as one, the deep rumble of the sleeper and the hiss of fire. We wake. Geralt woke before dawn, sweat freezing on his brow. The forest was silent save for the slow crack of branches under frost. He rose, strapped on his swords, and looked toward the east. The wind had changed again. It carried now the scent of smoke from far away. And beneath it, faint but certain, the pulse of something alive beneath the ground. He mounted Roach. Seems we've only just begun, he said quietly. The horse snorted, stamping her hoof. Geralt looked once more toward the burning horizon. The Witcher's path was long, and the world was turning toward chaos again. He tugged the reins, and they set off into the pale light of morning, one man, one horse, riding toward whatever darkness would rise next. And behind them, far away, the fire of Caer Duran burned without end. The land to the south of Caer Duran stretched vast and wild. The forest gave way to rolling plains dusted with frost, and the air, though bitter, carried the faint smell of thawing earth. Geralt of Rivia rode beneath a sky that bled pale light, the horizon veiled by low, restless clouds. The world had gone quiet again, as if drawing breath after the ruin left behind, but the Witcher knew better. Silence seldom lasted long. By the second day's ride, he reached a crossroads marked by an old stone post. Moss clung to its surface, obscuring the faded lettering. He leaned in, brushing the lichen aside. Novigrad, 70 miles. Karak, 95. Beneath, in faint, newer cuts, another hand had carved a warning. Beware the hollow veil, the dead remember. Geralt frowned. He'd heard of Hollow Vale once, years ago, in a tavern near Oxenfurt, a valley where the armies of Nilfgaard and the North had clashed, leaving thousands dead. Travelers claimed that on cold nights, the mist carried the sounds of war, steel clashing, men crying out, banners snapping in a wind long since gone. Soldiers avoided the place, as did peasants, which meant only one thing. Whatever haunted it, it was no simple tale. He spurred Roach forward. The wind cut sharp across the plain, carrying crows that wheeled and cried overhead. By dusk, the land began to dip. He saw it then. A shallow valley shrouded in gray fog, its slopes scattered with broken weapons and rusted armor. Once green grass lay trampled and dead. The bones of men and horses jutted from the ground like pale roots. Roach stopped, ears pricked, nostrils flaring. "I know," Geralt murmured, dismounting. "You don't like it, neither do I." He led her to a cluster of standing stones and tethered her there. The valley lay silent save for the faint whisper of wind. His medallion trembled, a steady, pulsing vibration. Strong magic lingered here, tangled and old. He descended carefully, sword drawn. The fog thickened around him, swallowing sound, swallowing light. After a few steps, the world became nothing but gray and shadow. Then came the first whisper. "Help us." Geralt stopped. The voice was faint, neither male nor female, drifting on the mist. He turned slowly, eyes scanning the fog. "Who speaks?" Another whisper followed, closer this time. "You should not have come." The ground beneath him shifted. He looked down and saw a hand clawing through the mud, bone-white fingers reaching, then another, dozens, wraiths. They rose like smoke, half-formed bodies shimmering in the fog, soldiers in tattered mail, faces hidden behind spectral helms. The air grew heavy, cold enough to sting his lungs. Geralt backed up, drawing a sign. "Yrden!" A circle of violet light flared beneath his boots. The nearest wraith shrieked as it crossed the barrier, its form flickering. Geralt's sword met it mid-strike. Silver cut through shadow. The creature howled and vanished. Another lunged from behind. He spun, parried, and sliced low, shearing through ghostly armor. One by one, they came at him, a tide of phantoms bound by fury and pain. "Back to your graves," he hissed, cutting through another. "You've had your war." But the wraiths did not yield. If anything, they grew stronger, their shapes solidifying. In the swirling mist, he saw flashes of the battle they'd died in, the clash of banners, the roar of commanders, the thunder of hooves. The air itself seemed to echo with it, the ghosts reliving their endless death. Then a new sound came, a horn, deep and mournful. The wraiths froze. The mist thickened once more, and from its heart rode a figure unlike the rest. Tall as two men clad in blackened armor, his helm adorned with a crown of rusted spikes. He bore a great sword that burned with pale fire. His horse was no horse at all, but a thing of bone and shadow. Geralt steadied his stance. "A general," he muttered. "Every army leaves one behind." The figure's voice rolled through the valley, deep as thunder. "Why trespass, Witcher? This ground is hallowed by blood." "Hallowed?" Geralt spat. "You're bound to it like a chain, not honored by it." The wraith raised its sword. "Leave or join us." Geralt's lips thinned. "I've never been much for company." The phantom charged. Steel met silver in a blinding flash. The force of the blow drove Geralt backward, boots sliding through mud. He countered, blade-cutting sparks against the general's armor. The wraith swung again, slow, deliberate, but each strike heavy enough to break bone. Geralt dodged, rolled, came up on one knee, and slashed across the phantom's side. The silver bit deep, and the wraith screamed. Ghostly fire poured from the wound, hissing as it hit the ground. "You cannot end me," it growled. "I am the echo of war itself." Geralt tightened his grip. "Then it's time for silence." He hurled a dimeritium bomb. The explosion flared white, and the wraith staggered, its sword guttering. Geralt lunged, driving his blade through its chest. The general's screams split the night. The other wraiths howled in answer, their forms unraveling. The fog burst outward in a wave of cold, and then silence. Geralt stood alone amid the bones and broken blades. The mist began to lift, revealing the valley as it truly was, empty, still, long dead. He cleaned his sword on the tattered banner that lay nearby. It bore no colors now, only rot. As he turned to leave, a faint glimmer caught his eye. Half buried in the mud lay a medallion, a wolf's head, but not of the school of the wolf. The craftsmanship was older, rougher, its eyes set with tiny shards of amber. He picked it up, turning it over in his palm. On the back, scratched faintly by hand, were words in elder speech. "To the last hunter, may your path never end." Geralt frowned. "Another Witcher?" He pocketed the medallion and climbed back toward the ridge. The air above the vale was cold and clear now. When he looked back, the fog was gone. Only the faint shimmer of moonlight remained on the bones below. Roach stamped her hoof as he approached, as if urging him to be gone. "Easy, girl," he murmured, mounting. "We're leaving." They rode through the night, the stars paling with the coming dawn. The valley faded behind him, but the weight of it lingered. A reminder that the world never forgot. It's dead. When the sun finally rose, he found a ridge overlooking the plains once more. He stopped there, watching light spill over the land. Somewhere ahead lay Novigrad, teeming with life and deceit. And beyond it, perhaps, another contract, another fight. But for that moment, the Witcher simply breathed. The wind carried the faint scent of thawing earth and distant smoke, the smell of a world that kept turning no matter how many ghosts it left behind. He touched the medallion he'd found, feeling the cool metal against his glove. "To the last hunter," he said quietly. "Let's hope your path was shorter than mine." Then he urged Roach onward. The road stretched before them, endless and pale, and the sound of hooves echoed across the awakening world as Geralt of Rivia rode once more into whatever waited beyond the next horizon. The road to Novigrad wound through fields, still sleeping under frost. The faint green of early spring clung stubbornly to the earth as though the world itself hesitated between death and renewal. Geralt rode with his cloak drawn tight, his breath misting in the morning chill. The sun rose slowly, pale and cold, behind a veil of clouds. For days he followed the trade road west, passing small villages scarred by winter and war alike. Roofs sagged under snow, fences leaned, smoke rose thin from hearths where people burned whatever they could find. The smell of it, damp wood, straw, old cloth, clung to the air. Every face he passed carried the same hollow weariness. At a crossroads tavern, he stopped for food and word. The inn was crowded, full of merchants and guards seeking warmth. The noise dulled as he entered. Familiar silence, the kind that follows a witcher wherever he goes. The barkeep, a burly woman with arms like oak branches, eyed him warily but poured ale all the same. "You'll find no beasts here, witcher, just empty bellies and bad tempers." Geralt drank, the bitter taste steadying. "Empty bellies breed monsters of their own," he said. A man at a nearby table looked up. His cloak bore the crest of Novigrad's city watch. "He's not wrong," the man said, voice low. "Bodies turning up along the canal, skinned clean. Priest of the eternal fire says it's punishment for heresy, but..." He hesitated. "We found claw marks on the bones." Geralt raised a brow. "You're looking for someone to clean it up." The guard studied him a long moment. "Captain said no more witchers, after the last one took coin and vanished. But if you're heading that way, you'll find work enough." Geralt nodded. "What was the last witcher's name?" "Didn't say," the guard replied. "Carried a medallion, wolf's head like yours, but older, rusted." Geralt's eyes narrowed. "When?" "Month passed, maybe more." He left the tavern soon after, the conversation lingering like smoke in his thoughts. The medallion he'd found in Hollow Vale, the same design. Another witcher had walked this path, and recently, dead perhaps or gone astray. Either way, it was no coincidence. He reached the outskirts of Novigrad 2 days later. The city loomed ahead, vast and gray, its towers rising through morning fog like broken teeth. The scent of smoke and river rot greeted him long before the gates, the familiar perfume of the free city. The guards waved him through after a cursory glance. Inside, the streets were as crowded and filthy as ever. Merchants shouting, carts creaking, beggars calling out for coin. Above it all, the bells of the great cathedral tolled noon, the sound heavy and cold. Geralt made his way to the lower quarter where the canals ran dark beneath stone bridges. The air there was thick with the stench of refuse and something fouler still. The guard had not exaggerated. The water glistened with oil and filth, and on the shore 2 men hauled a body from the shallows. He approached. One of the men, a thin, nervous watchman, stepped back when he saw the witcher's eyes. "By the gods," he muttered, "another one." Geralt crouched beside the corpse. It was male, young, skin pale and waxen. Strips of flesh were missing along the arms and chest. The wounds were clean, deliberate, not the tearing of beasts, but the carving of knives. Yet the bones bore long gashes, too deep, too irregular for any blade. He touched the edge of one wound. "Claws," he said quietly, "large, curved." The watchman shuddered. "You've seen its like?" "Once, long ago. Echidna sea wraiths that feed on blood, not flesh, but this one hunts on land." He rose, eyes following the trail of wet prints leading from the canal into the maze of alleys. "Where do the bodies usually turn up?" "Always along the south docks," the man replied, "never more than a night apart." "The priests call it the hand of the fire." "We call it bad luck." Geralt nodded. "Keep to the gates tonight, I'll handle the rest." He followed the tracks as evening fell through streets narrowing into shadow. The river's whisper faded, replaced by the distant chant of priests in the square. He passed shuttered shops, crumbling walls, the glow of lanterns dimmed by mist. At last, he reached the edge of the docks, a narrow quay overlooking black water. Crates lay stacked in heaps, and the smell of rot clung thick as fog. He waited, silent. The night deepened. Then came the sound, light, quick steps along the cobbles. Not human. He turned just as the thing leapt from the shadows, a blur of pale limbs, eyes gleaming blue. Its mouth was lined with needle teeth, its hands ending in curved talons slick with blood. Geralt's sword was in his hand before it struck. Steel met flesh, sparks scattering as the blade bit deep into its side. The creature screamed, the sound more hiss than voice, and lashed back. Its claws raked across his chest plate, sparks bursting where metal met monster. "Fast," he muttered, stepping back. "Too fast." He drew a sign. "Ard." The blast of force hurled the creature into a pile of crates. Wood splintered. The echidna rose again, snarling. Geralt threw a moondust bomb. Silver dust bloomed through the air, coating its skin. The creature shrieked as the magic burned, stumbling back toward the canal. "Not this time," he said, lunging. The sword found its mark, piercing through the chest. The echidna convulsed, limbs twitching, and fell still. Its blood hissed on the stones, steaming faintly. He knelt beside it, studying the features. Female, once human, perhaps. The eyes had turned glassy, but there was something familiar in the shape of the jaw, the scar on the cheek. He frowned. From his pouch, he drew the rusted medallion, the one from Hollow Vale. He held it beside her throat. There, beneath the grime, hung the same medallion, worn but unbroken. Another Witcher's pendant. He froze. No. He pried it free and turned it in his hand. On the back, faint letters. Ulrich of Caer Seren. A Witcher long thought dead, gone missing years ago. Whatever had made this creature, it had once been him. Geralt stood slowly, the medallions clutched tight. The streets were silent now, the mist thick as wool. Above, the bells began to toll midnight. He looked down at the corpse, the once human Witcher turned monster, and for the first time in a long while, felt something colder than fear. Someone had done this. Someone had learned how to twist even Witcher blood. He turned toward the cathedral spire, glimmering faintly through the fog. The eternal fire, he murmured, always purging, never learning. He left the body where it lay, vanishing into the mist before the watchman arrived. Behind him the city slept uneasily, unaware that its new monster was not of the swamp or the grave, but born of men who claimed to serve light. As dawn bled over Novigrad, Geralt rode from its gates. 2 wolf medallions at his belt, their eyes glinting like twin stars. Somewhere in the east, the marshlands stirred again, whispering to him in dreams of water and flame. The Witcher rode on, his path unending, his shadow long across the waking world. The road beyond Novigrad stretched into the east, winding between hills that still bore the scars of war. Villages lay in ruin, fields blackened by old fire, yet spring crept through the desolation, green buds breaking from dead wood, streams thawing to silver, crows calling from high nests. Geralt rode without pause, the clatter of roaches' hooves echoing through the hollow valleys. His cloak was heavy with rain and road dust, his thoughts heavier still. 2 wolf medallions hung at his belt, They clinked faintly with each motion, the sound sharp as memory. He had turned the discovery over and over in his mind. Ulrich of Caer Seren, the Witcher remade into a monster. The alchemist's experiments, the cursed fire of Caer Durin, the sleeper beneath the marsh, all threads of the same dark weave. Whoever had begun this had not sought only to twist men but witchers themselves, to corrupt the hunters and make them prey. He passed through hamlets where children hid at the sight of him. Once or twice he heard the mutter of priests, spreading the creed of the eternal fire louder than ever. Their words rose on the wind. The Witcher's age ends. The fire will cleanse the tainted blood. Geralt ignored them. He had heard such sermons before. Yet this time, beneath the empty piety, he sensed something else. Purpose. There was coin behind their zeal, an intelligence guiding it. The fire had found new patrons, new experiments. By dusk he reached the river Chotla, swollen with meltwater. A ferryman slept in his boat, hat over his face, until the Witcher's shadow fell across him. Novigrad's ghost returns, the man muttered, squinting up. Heard the bells toll for another witch last night. Geralt handed him 2 coppers. I'm not fond of sermons. They crossed in silence. Midway, a patch of mist rolled across the river. The ferryman shivered. Not natural, that fog. Been rising every dawn for a week now. Voices in it too. Some say the fire's work. Geralt said nothing, though his medallion's faint vibration told him the truth was nearer to monsters than miracles. When they reached the far bank, he followed the road toward a watchtower long abandoned. Local rumor claimed smugglers used it, but the Witcher saw no tracks of men, only claw marks scored into the door and the faint smell of sulfur. He entered. Inside, the air was thick and warm. The stones bore strange symbols scorched into them, half buried under layers of ash. At the tower's heart burned a small brazier filled with green flame, the same hue he had seen in the marshes. Around it lay bones, dozens of them, arranged in a circle. Geralt crouched, brushing the ash away. Some of the bones were animal, others human, and among them, gleaming faintly, another medallion. Not wolf this time, cat, the sigil of another school. He swore softly. Someone was hunting witchers. A noise stirred behind him. He turned, blade drawn. A man stepped from the shadows, a thin figure, pale, his eyes too bright. Not a priest, though his cloak bore the fire's symbol. You move quietly, Witcher, the stranger said. But not quietly enough. Geralt kept his stance. You've been expecting me. The man smiled. For some time. We followed you from Torvin. The alchemist was an early attempt. You, however, are the culmination. Try speaking sense. The stranger's eyes glinted. We seek to purify the imperfect. Witchers are a bridge between men and monsters. You were meant to die long ago, yet you persist. Mutations unchecked will unbroken. We mean to change that. Geralt's voice dropped to ice. You're breeding monsters. We're perfecting them. The man stepped closer, unafraid. The sleeper was only the beginning. Its blood flows in the rivers now, in the marshes, in you. Did you think destroying it ended the work? You carry it, Witcher. Its mark burns inside you even now. Geralt's medallion throbbed hard against his chest. He felt the faint pulse of warmth beneath his ribs, a dull ache that had begun days ago. Rage steadied his hand. You talk too much. The sword flashed. The man moved faster than human reflex should allow, dodging back, his cloak flaring. He raised one hand, and the green fire answered, leaping toward Geralt in a serpent's coil. The Witcher rolled aside, the flame searing past. "Signs," the stranger sneered. "Old tricks." Geralt flung a bomb. The explosion of silver dust filled the tower. The man screamed as the alchemical smoke bit into his flesh. Geralt was already moving, low, swift, silent. His sword found the gap beneath the ribs and drove through. The man gasped, eyes wide with fury and revelation. "Too late," he whispered. "It's begun." He fell, blood hissing where it struck the stones. The brazier's flames sputtered and died, leaving the tower dark save for the faint glow beneath the Witcher's collar, the pulse that was not his own. Geralt wiped the blade clean and crouched beside the corpse. The man's veins were black with the same corruption that had marked the alchemist. On his wrist was a brand, 3 concentric circles, the innermost glowing faintly green, the mark of the sleeper. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, though no storm brewed. The air itself trembled, heavy with magic. Geralt stepped out into the twilight, the wind tugging at his cloak. Far to the west, over Novigrad, a faint green light shimmered against the clouds. He mounted Roach and turned north, toward the Witcher keep of Kaer Morhen. Whatever curse ran through the land, he would need the others to face it. Lambert, Eskel, Vesemir, if he still drew breath. There were answers to be found in the old halls where Witchers had first been made. The ride took him through the night. The stars burned faintly above, their light veiled by drifting cloud. He stopped only once by a frozen stream where the moon's reflection trembled on the water. The ache in his chest grew stronger, a slow, steady pulse. He pressed a hand to it and felt the warmth spreading outward like the whisper of fire. "Not today," he muttered. "You'll have to try harder than that." The medallions at his belt rattled softly in the wind. Wolf, wolf, and cat, symbols of a dying breed. He wondered how many were left now, how many would stand beside him when the fire and the mire came together again. By dawn he reached the mountain pass. Snow swept across the cliffs in thin veils, and the first stones of Kaer Morhen rose through the mist ahead. The fortress looked smaller than he remembered, lonelier, but the sight of its gates stirred something old and steady in him. He spurred Roach onward, her hooves ringing on the stones. As he crossed the bridge, the sun broke through the clouds, turning the world to silver. For a moment, the ache in his chest eased. "Home," he said softly. The words carried on the cold wind, lost among the mountains. But beneath them, deep in the earth, something ancient stirred. A heartbeat answering his own. Far below Kaer Morhen, in the dark where no man had walked in centuries, green light flickered and spread as if roots were reaching upward through stone. And in that rising hum of unseen power, the Witcher's path, long and lonely, bent toward its end or its beginning. Geralt rode into the keep, unaware that the shadow he carried now rode with him. The twin medallions at his belt clinked once more and then fell still, as if the world itself had paused